in the world, is for the largest emissions from transportation and also from buildings. We have been working, I would say, for about 2 years now, mostly through the Carbon Finance Union of the World Bank, to advance what we've termed as a citywide approach to carbon finance. And the point of that is to enable the aggregation of the greenhouse gas emissions from cities. Now, the rationale for that, I would say, the biggest reason for doing that, for having this citywide approach and aggregation, so that the burden of high transaction costs. The other two speakers before me have already mentioned many of the difficulties with the CDM, so I won't go into that. But what I would like to mention on this slide, which is actually very important, which was actually a huge advance, is that the door is now actually open for citywide programs that use fuels. And there were two main milestones in that. Last December in Cancun, the governments did take a decision, you can see the decision there, which made a specific request to the CDM Executive Board to simplify the POAs for multiple methodologies. And very important, we included the phrase in there, or I should say the government's included the phrase of possible citywide programs. It then took, I think, about 9 months, but it was 2.5 weeks ago now, in late September, that the CDM Executive Board met for the 63rd time. And in Annex 4 of that meeting, it was approved the standard for the application of multiple CDM methodologies. Now, what that means is we actually have the formal CDM standard to be able to do this aggregation for cities. And very importantly, even though there is a huge amount of uncertainty on the post-2012 regime, we do also think that this also opens the door to the voluntary carbon markets. So for example, VCS, the voluntary carbon standard, generally accepts all CDM rules. So now, in principle, VCS could also be asked to validate a citywide project, which could then go to the voluntary carbon markets to sell credits. Now, the next step on this road then is to actually put together a citywide POA and to actually have it registered with the CDM and then to start generating CDRs. Now, again, because of the uncertainty around the post-2012 regime, and I won't go into that because as we mentioned by other speakers already, there are good questions to ask about, well, what's the point of doing something like this now, given the lateness in the day. This is the what may or may not happen in 2012. But I wanted to give you an example, really, of how exactly this might work. So this is here a generic illustration of how you might actually pull together a citywide approach. So obviously the municipal authority or the city government would be pulling this together. You would have your citywide greenhouse gas inventory, and then you would look at your sectors. You will see there under each of the sectors, transport, waste, energy, some examples of the tools which could be used to help you to analyze the opportunities in each sector. And then to go down to one level more below that, and we actually have these little numbered squares and the explanations below them to really identify the individual initiatives which could be done in a city, which could then be bundled together into the citywide POA. We are working with the city of Amman in Jordan, or I should say Greater Amman municipality, where we work together to apply the international standard. And so we have the greenhouse gas inventory for Amman. We understand where how much the different sectors are contributing. A lot of that is underpinned by the city's master plan to 2025. And you will see there some of the specific initiatives under the different sectors which have been identified already for bundling together in a citywide approach. Now, in practice, how this is done, it works at a number of levels. There are some things which are directly within the control of the city government, of the municipality. So those would be projects or initiatives which the city itself undertakes. And that would be, for example, the improvements in public transport. Or on the solid waste side, you'll see there on capturing landfill gas. Very often in different cities, it's the city which manages these areas, and therefore which would be able to put together these projects. Now, one step beyond that, from what's immediately or within the control of the city, would then be these things, or I should say other things, which are occurring or will occur within the city, within the space of the city, but which would have to be implemented by the private sector or by individual citizens. And so you'll see there, for example, number 2, to encourage cycling. People have to take their own individual decisions about taking non-motorized transport. And on the energy efficiency side of the buildings, for example, number 11, all of these initiatives need to be taken by the owners of the buildings themselves, with the support of regulatory frameworks of the cities. But I wanted then to round off what I'm saying this afternoon by broadening the scope of the discussions a little bit this afternoon, which is to say that I think we ought to be looking more broadly at climate finance, or just carbon finance, and also to say, really, to come out and be quite honest and say that actually there's rather less money available for climate finance than most people think. On this slide, you will see sort of mitigation funding available, adaptation funding, and I've listed there some of the various funding or financing instruments which the World Bank does work through to provide support in certain funding countries and cities. So they're there. Getting information and sorting through all of the complexities of the universe of climate finance is not easy. So I wanted to mention one effort here which we partnered with UNDP on climate finance options. So this is a website, climatefinanceoptions.org. You can go there. And again, because the demand from cities is actually a specific section within climate finance options website, which is targeted information for cities on climate finance in cities. Lastly, I would like to mention, and this picks up also on what my colleague from UNDP said, to think a little bit again beyond sort of CDM itself and the mechanisms for that. And one example which I'd like to put to you, which would be independent of CDM, independent of UNFCCC, and which cities can do by themselves already, is in this case city-based emissions trading. Now, the ETS, emissions trading scheme, emissions trading system, which the city of Tokyo has, is the world's first, and to our knowledge, the only really truly functioning ETS at the city level, which has the primary objective of global climate mitigation. Now, the ETS, so that the theory and practice of emissions trading is not new. It's been done for a couple of decades now, mostly in the US, so you'll see some examples there. But many of them have had the objective of reducing the pollution in other areas and not necessarily at the city level. I want to give you a quick overview of what Tokyo's ETS is all about. The easy thing about Tokyo is that most of their emissions are from their electricity consumption. So they were just looking at the energy-based CO2 and looking at the individual electricity bills, and this was relatively simple or straightforward, I should say, to put together. They have their targets there, and within Japan, it's this sort of the system they have is, Japan has its national commitments under the UNFCCC, but then the sort of the targets are up to the sort of individual subnational governments to work towards within Japan. And then, quite importantly, for simplicity, was they worked with categories of the largest facilities in Tokyo. So you'll see here large categories, those who have a consumption of above 1,500 kiloliters of crude oil equivalent a year. And then they also have a system or requirement for mandatory reporting by smaller and medium-sized facilities. So they actually have a very impressive collection of data on the energy consumption, the electricity consumption since the year 2000. Now, trading and offset arrangements, you can bank the accumulated credits, you can borrow. Small and medium facilities which have voluntarily reduced their emissions can sell the credits to the larger ones. And then they also allow for renewable energy credits in their system. And most recently, this scheme has been expanded or combined with the prefecture of Saitama. So there is actually now a larger area which is Tokyo Metropolitan Government plus Saitama County. And lastly, and I know Raphael's got enough because I've run out of time, but I just wanted to say also that broadly within climate finance, we really need to be looking at the costs and the investments to us of adapting to what we cannot avoid with the coming changing climate. And so you'll see here from the Economics of Adaptation to Climate Change study from the World Bank. This is a very large global study of the annual costs of adaptation up to 2050. And you see here, what's interesting about this is many of the sectors here on this table are actually related to cities, meaning to say that many of the costs will fall on cities or in cities. So very quickly on the adaptation side, I just wanted to mention that we're also working on urban risk assessments to help build resilience in cities. And but I won't go into that because I think that's not directly the topic of discussion this afternoon, but just to say that we believe that this is quite an important or very important area of work as well, apart from the emissions reductions. So with that, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Marcus.